Thanks, David. And it's great seeing the direction RAD Studio is going as a development platform, being able to give us a unified um, development code base that we can target out to Windows, to Mac, to iOS, to Android. The roadmap's pointing to being able to reach out to Linux in the future as well. All these capabilities are great. Everywhere we go, though, we do need to be able to store data to be able to give us the capabilities to work offline that our applications really need. Just think of email as an example. Where would we be if we couldn't work on our email on the trains or the planes when we're traveling around? And having the ability to work offline and online requires the safe storage of specific parts of data, but also keeping that data up to date and in sync. And that presents some real challenges around mobilization, especially with the sheer scale that we look at with mobile. And the easiest way for us to do that developmentally is to be able to query the database to find out what's changed, be able to get that data down to the remote devices. And that's something we're going to explore through this session, looking at how some new patent pending technologies within InterBase provide that to you today, how it's been deeply integrated into FireDAC, and how you can literally in a couple of lines of code retrieve the delta changes from a remote server and update your local database, which is phenomenally powerful. InterBase has been used for a long time because of its admin-free capabilities, and also InterBase is used a lot in kind of medical and POS systems and a whole range of different places where you don't want to have a DBA on site all the time. And this really lends itself well with its small footprint to getting out to mobile devices, having that full capability of the database engine running inside your application on iOS and Android, but also on deployments that you're running across the network or even remotely just on laptops for iOS and Android as well, and Windows. So anyway, let's have a quick look at some of the background updates that you may have missed over the last few releases around InterBase. And then we'll get into having a look at some of the new powerful capabilities, specifically change views, which is, say, this new patent pending technology for tracking data changes and getting them out to you. So I'm Stephen Ball, and I'm the Associate Product Manager here at Embarcadero for InterBase. If you want to catch up with me or if you have any questions, then please do feel free to email me through, and stephen.ball@embarcadero.com. But also I'd definitely say just take down my blog here, Delphiable. You have to excuse the pun on my name. I think a lot of things are Delphiable, so but please do follow me on Twitter or catch up with me on my blog. There's some in-depth articles there taking us through the depth that I can't cover in a quick 20-minute video here on change views and some of the extra capabilities around InterBase. So recent versions, we've seen some great capabilities brought into the core InterBase kernel, things like dynamic SQL in stored procedures, where you can dynamically build a SQL statement that you want to run based off whatever you're fetching back from data or from parameters passed in. And this gives a real flexibility to stored procedures. Also, we've always focused on making sure that InterBase is very, very fast and very robust. And one of the things that we've done a couple of versions back now is to actually optimize the large object handling. And this is all part of the work that we did for supporting much larger databases. But one of the really cool things that we added in was when you do a query like a select average salary from employees, or when you're using aggregate queries or select count from, the database needs to read the page in to be able to parse it, find the data, and carry on through. And a big part of the record often is blobs. So those blobs are being kind of stored in a slightly different way in the database, which means they're not always being read in with the rest of the page, which speeds up dramatically some of those kinds of queries and reduces the disk I/O and just makes the database a lot more stable and robust as well, which is kind of cool. A huge amount of security and encryption updates through the last few editions. The security model that we've got within InterBase takes you way beyond what you can get with SQLite on a mobile device. SQLite, you'll have everything encrypted or unencrypted. That's it. So if you're building a HR application and you don't want the developers to find out what you're earning, then having column level encryption and only allowing people with the right rights to read that data from that column, that can really protect your data. It can protect the security policies that your data controllers put in place. Really helps you provide a much stronger level of compliance with the applications you build, and it can help actually eliminate mistakes that you might make refactoring code and inadvertently show specific column data to specific people. Well, if it's encrypted anyway, you might just get the default 0 back, saying you can't actually read it, even if it does accidentally get on the screen. So some great things to help you stay compliant along the way, which is very, very important nowadays. ODBC drivers, we now have our own ODBC driver for InterBase. We used to have one that was licensed, and we now have our own ones, which are great and are much more feature-rich than the older ODBC drivers, allowing you to do backups and restores of databases through them, and some other really, really clever things as well. Fast database sweeps is something that was really important to make sure that we had working in the database. It's been in there for a while now. I know a lot of people used to turn database sweeps off on some older database versions, and especially on older versions of InterBase and Firebird. The database sweep, even on our busiest customers who are doing tens of thousands of transactions an hour, takes kind of a second. It really is very, very quick. Database, obviously, having Windows, Mac, iOS, and Android now. We also have Linux as a platform that we provide. So you have where you need for today and also for tomorrow. So great choice for moving out. But also it means if you want to target your database server being Linux and reduce down licensing costs, you can develop on Windows, and then the portability just means copy and paste the database file across and off you go. And it's the same for developing out for iOS and Android. You can work with your database locally and just deploy it with your application and off you go, which is great. Now, something you may have missed, because I know we've probably not done the best job we can at kind of shouting about it, is a free edition of InterBase. So there's a version called IB Lite, which you get the key with your application for Rad Studio. In there, you just need to go register. You'll get a license file that you put on a specific location on your machine, and that's you done. You can then build applications for iOS, Android, Windows, and Mac that have the core InterBase kernel deployed inside the application to provide some data storage. Now, great thing as well is if you want to use this as a client install to be able to communicate with an InterBase server, then you can actually use that with your applications without having to deploy the InterBase server as well. So the InterBase client onto a remote machine, you can actually use the IB Lite or To Go, which is its big brother version, as a client driver, which is great for installation scenarios where you have less control over the devices you're installing onto. But it also means that an iOS device or an Android device can connect to a central database directly if you're within the right confines for being able to do that. Now, InterBase XE7, we introduced some great new features. Change views is one which we're going to have a look at, but also the ability to run a huge amount of transactions over a really long time. We have some customers today who are the most busiest transaction-based customers we have, and they'll back up and restore their database as a maintenance point probably about once every month. With the new transaction IDs being 64-bit, they would be able to run for about 150 years before they need to do the same job, which is a phenomenally long point of time. We also have done some updates to the performance monitor that's built into IB Console for monitoring the system, and this all now works with 64-bit transaction IDs and means you can run for a lot longer and actually pick up more data to analyze your performance. New in XE7 as well is 64-bit Linux release, and we've also added Ubuntu 14 to the platforms. or the official Linux distros that we support. We've also updated to the much newer OpenSSL, where we've never had any kind of versions that have been affected by anything, but it's always good to keep up to date. Speed improvement wise, under the hood, again, we've had SMP support for over 14 years, and that's, all the Firebird developers who try InterBase tell us how fast InterBase is in comparison, and a big part of that is down to the SMP support, but also down to the other stuff that we mentioned with the large object handling and so on. But also we're constantly improving that. We've had some great feedback from the beta teams around some updates to some index managers we've made, which means you can basically maintain less indexes and still provide the same capabilities through the database, which is amazing, especially where you have kind of field A, B, and C, building an index. If you're only using A and B as the fields, or just field A, then you can actually just use part of the index rather than the whole thing, which reduces the amount of processing that's going on and the speed to execute. And we've got this new feature called distinguished data dumps, which basically allow you to create a read-only backup of the database. Commonly this is used for failover or for reporting systems, and you can leave it running constantly in the background to on a batch job to keep updating the dump. But the great thing is that because once it's done the dump, it knows where it's got to, and next time you run the distinguished part of the dump, it will only pick up the pages that have changed and then just move those across. So it's an exceptionally powerful way to keep a very fresh copy of the database ready to go if you ever have any problems. Now, we also have exposed additional servicing APIs and a great developer feature that allows you to back up and restore to an older version of InterBase. This is great if you're maintaining customers who've got older editions, or you want to test against InterBase XE3 or XE or 2007, 2009, from a backup and restore. And this really does help your end-to-end testing that you're then basing your work on to go out to your customers. So let's get into the main bit for today, how changes have been tracked historically and how we can do it now with InterBase. So one of the key things really is tracking of changes has provided a number of challenges, especially as we try to scale up for mobile. Now, one approach typically used has been triggers. So you have a trigger on the table, and then every time there's a change made, you then log to a database table that change has happened. Now, you may be logging just at a field, at a record level. If you want to log at a field level, then say you've got 10 fields in the table. I know customers that have got over 100, but say you've got 10 fields in the table. One changed record may create 11 records in the database, 11 field logs and one for the actual change on the record itself. Now this can really verbose out your databases very, very quickly. If you come back and make another change to the same record straight away, you'll then end up with more records in the log table that you've got to pass and process through. And this is kind of really can verbose out your database. It's really hard to find out what's happened through a query. You've actually got to go and pass the log and process that through. It's really kind of suited for small scale synchronization jobs only. But triggers have their place. They're still great for doing auditing and that kind of side of things. One of the other approaches people take has been date fields, and again, these verbose out your database tables by adding additional fields in. If you're tracking at the record level, then it's one field. If you're tracking at a field level, then every field then has an additional date field. This increases obviously disk usage. It's very complex to manage. It's very hard to manage around simultaneous user updates. You need to actually lock the database to provide something that is stable for doing this type of work. Huge amount of risks around, say I'm updating 1 million records and somebody comes along and updates another one. How are you going to find that one that's been updated in the middle? It's going to have a timestamp in the middle of the rest that you're doing. Things like this can be very, very difficult to comprehend and work with properly. So date fields have their problems, and even when date times change on the servers with time zones moving forward and backwards with summertime and that kind of side of things, it can lead to issues in terms of tracking the data. So we wanted to develop something that would be a lot easier to work with, that was very mobile friendly, that was very, very scalable, because we need something that scales today, that's simple for the developer to implement. Once they've done their RAD development, got the application sorted, then let's work at keeping that data updated afterwards. So we came up with change views. Now, change views is a new subscription-based model to subscribe to data and identify what data has changed in the database. Subscriptions can run either during a connection or spanning connections. So you don't need to actually stay connected. You can have your subscription, make it active, go do some work, disconnect from the server, go out, be remote, be in the middle of the desert for a few days if you need to, or in the middle of the city where there's no reception, come back in, connect up, and you can then pick up your subscription and find out specifically what's changed. Now, within InterBase we have a concept of a database user, and each user who subscribes is a subscriber. And each subscriber can have multiple devices. It could be a laptop, it could be a phone, it could be a tablet, it could be another server. Now, those multiple devices can then be subscribed as well through the same user. So when you activate your subscription, you activate the subscription for a user and a device ID, and that pair becomes a unique key to a subscription. So traditionally, briefcasing data, we're just going to move through time here quickly. First thing, we just grab the data. And then something happens, there's some more changes made to the server, we then need to grab the data again. And something else happens, and we have to go grab the data again. Something else happens, and if we're keeping up to date every time, we're able to see that we've done, in this really simple example, 23 data packets that have been fetched. What change views allows you to get to is just what's changed, right at field level granularity. And it allows you to query that with SQL as well, to say, select from table where photo is not same, and you can find out specifically if this is a photo, you actually get no records because they're all the same still. This is really, really powerful. So say they're tied to specific data, and that allows you at a column level to see what's changed. Subscription, you can have one or more tables in there, and you can either subscribe to the whole table or to specific columns within a table. One of the really powerful things that change views does is when you connect up and you're within your subscription, if you make changes at that point in time, those changes have been made to the database. So when you run your query to find out what's changed, you don't want to know about those because you made the change. Now, if you just made a million record changes, then the last thing you want to have is those coming back to you. So by not getting those changes report back, it's very, very lightweight, but everybody else will be able to see those changes. As I say, it can run across connections, no need to stay connected. So what change views provide and how they're different is near zero footprint on the database, field level granularity, exceptionally high scalability, tightly bound into the user control, exceptionally powerful integration into the FIDAC and the IBX components. We're going to have a look at the FIDAC stuff in a moment. They're also very easy to implement. You just create the script, run it, subscribe in the code. They're SQL queryable as well, so you can say select star from table where first name is not same. You can do a query to find out, select count from table to find out how many records have changed. They're multi-user thread safe as well, because we're basing this off the ACID compliance that InterBase has. We know who's connected, we know who's making the changes, and even if somebody else connects at the same time and makes changes at the same time, they're outside your transaction. So when you go and query what's changed, we're able to find everything that's changed outside of your transaction since your transaction started, which means the stuff that other people have made as well. So exceptionally powerful from that kind of point of view. So what this means as a developer, you can say goodbye to timestamp tracking fields, you can say goodbye to locking tables for writing when you've got multiple people trying to update things through. You don't need to go in and write additional triggers to put on the database tables for inserts, updates and deletes. No table structural changes are required, and you don't need a log table that just verboses out your database. So let's get in and actually see this stuff working. Okay, so I'm just going to open here a sample project, and you have these sample projects in your XE8 installs. So just go to Object Pascal, and under here I'm going to go Database, FireDAC, samples, database specific ones, InterBase, and here we've got a change view. I'm going to go to the pharmacy example here. So within here, this is a proof of concept that we put together to help a customer who had about 30,000 sites they needed to keep up to date with specific central data. And they had no way to generate a delta for each site of what had changed centrally. So we did a little application that read a central Microsoft SQL Server database and updated InterBase database with that data. And then all the pharmacies subscribed to the InterBase database to then be able to read specifically what had changed just for them. And that's a really nice example of how to use change views. So I'm going to launch up here both on the debug and the release example. Basically, I've done a little trick here where I put two separate ini files. This one, pharmacy 1, and this one here is pharmacy 2. One in the release and one in the debug. It just allows me to get those going quickly. And then the other one here is the central database admin tool for modifying the central data, just for a quick demo purpose. So here I'm going to just quickly fetch any deltas that are out there. And I can see there's actually a change here. This isn't been pulled down yet, so let's just update that. So here I've got my local data. And this is using my application. And I'm going to go ahead and just modify some of the central data. So this is a central database. I'm just going to go change that to allergies. And let's go ahead and put another value in here on the medicine name. And let's just go ahead and fetch the deltas now. And we can see that we get the data through. I'm also going to use this show merged, which is going to basically take the local data into a memory table, FireDAC memory table, and then use a delta merge option, which is a new capability in FireDAC, to merge the remote deltas into it. And we can see now at field level granularity specifically what has changed in bold. So I'm going to, you can see we've got the same stuff here. Let's just go and post those into pharmacy 2. Let's go and make another change in here, and let's go ahead and make this 3, and let's go ahead and put some value in here. And let's just go ahead and fetch the data here. We can see now we've got those 2 records showing here. We've got the same 2 records showing here. Nothing in there though, but it's still showing here because that hasn't been populated down. So we're seeing now the most recent change only, and we're not seeing that it's been something else and then something else again. And I can now post those in both databases and we're up to date and all square. So that's really cool. The code underneath this is exceptionally simple. The way this works is we've got 2 queries, one for the local database and one for the remote database. The remote database query is exactly the same as the local one. The only thing we've got different here is we've got a transaction. This transaction is in snapshot mode, and I've got it defaulted to rollback because I don't want it to commit unless I say, right, I've got all the data. We then activate the subscription through SQL, and we then run the same query, and that then just provides us the deltas. So the code underneath here, really, really simple. So we set the local queries to be cached updates because we're going to be applying the delta changes in there. We open the local queries. We then activate our transaction for the remote server. We then set the subscription and the subscription name at the device ID active. That then puts us into only reading delta mode. We then run the same queries, and then we're able to use this merge data set and the delta merge to actually apply just the change elements across into our merged data set. And then to post those in, we literally just take the local database, apply that delta merge in again, and apply updates, and that's it, job done. Now, the great thing about this is we're able to use inbuilt capabilities that we've had for years. For example, with with T-column, we have this dataset update status, and that tells us if it's unmodified, modified, inserted, or deleted. We're able to use that at runtime by applying that delta merge into the local dataset to find out what's changed. So it's the same as you just typing some changes in locally. If you've already got code that does this work, then this will just work straight into that, which is amazing and very, very cool. So that's change views in a nutshell. Really, really simple to implement. On the database, let's just go and see the subscription here. Just create a subscription name on specific tables and columns. You put in kind of like your column A, column B, column C here, for example. And then for insert updates and deletes, you can have them all on the same, or you can track deletes separately. If you do that, then you just need to set the 2 subscriptions active if you need to, or whatever. It's really up to you. And then just allow people to subscribe to it. That is it. That is as simple as it is to create a subscription that you can then subscribe to and use. So that really is it. 3 lines of code to keep our local data updated with the changes we fetch from the 3 tables remotely. And that does the inserts, the updates and deletes, just as simple as that, which is very, very cool. So InterBase available in 2 types of editions. There's the installed version, which is server and desktop, and then there's the deeply embedded version, which is to go and IB Lite. And the server edition allows multiple users across the same database, and the desktop is multiple applications on the same machine to the same database, and then the to go and IB Lite run just for the single application, allowing only that application to work with the database. But that is basically what you have and how you use it. So I'll hand back to David and the rest of the team now. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope you found this really, really interesting, and please do feel free to get in contact if you have any questions over change views and interface.